Right, good evening, everybody.
Evening.
Are we supposed to do that? This might be recorded and blah, blah, blah.
Is this recorded from today, from yesterday, isn't it?
Yes.
Well, there you go. So, you might be recorded. You might be on tape. Okay, right, so, item 1, apologies for absence. Everybody here? Right.
Councillor Plant has apologised. Substituted by Councillor Edwards.
Substitute by Councillor Edwards. Right, good, thank you. Item 2, declarations of interest. Any? No. Okay, item 3, the minutes of our last meeting on the 25th of September. Can I sign those as a true and correct record?
Yeah.
All in favour?
Yeah.
Thank you. Right, so as part of those, there were some actions which I think, Charlotte, you had one more to put in, is that right?
I did, Chairman. So, the two actions that were down from last time on the performance report, you wanted some extra information about the average waiting time of applicants rehoused by choice-based lettings. I've spoken to Donna Dwyer, the Strategic Housing Manager, and it's not possible to break down the information any further because it's too complex. She's happy to provide you with a better explanation of how they get to the information, but she'd like to know what it is you're actually looking for before she can do that. So if anybody can remember what they were after, I can get you what you need.
Oh, blimey.
If you can't remember, it can't be important.
Maybe it'll come back when we get onto the performance report this time round. The second one is you wanted us to give some consideration to a few gaps that were there within the targets, and we're actually looking at that internally as part of the service planning process for next year, so we'll pay close attention and make sure there are no gaps.
Okay. Right, thank you. Was that it on actions and responses? Councillor Walker?
I wonder if I can ask a question about number 10, which was about planning and the making of enforcement results public in the same way that planning applications are. Response on the basis that no, we can't because it might compromise current cases or current ongoing cases. The inference there being that matters that have been resolved in one way or another could be. Not every case is ongoing. So
Yeah.
things that have been investigated and either found to be not worthy of further investigation or that have been investigated and concluded, one assumes that information could be made public.
Yes, they've actually qualified it by talking about current ongoing cases, haven't they? Whereas, as you say, there are some that will have run their course and be concluded.
Yeah, I think we were coming from the perspective of the perception of residents that something's been raised and
They never hear
potentially
anything more
ignored and
about
never
it.
heard anything. Whereas if it's been raised, looked at, concluded, then perhaps we ought to be aiming to have that information public.
Kath, is that something that maybe Dave Mitchell can?
Yeah, I'm happy to
Can
take
look
that back. No problem at all. Unfortunately, I wasn't at the last meeting, so I haven't got all the context around this. But I know they will understand. So yeah, and the response, as you rightly point out, refers to current ongoing cases. So yeah.
Okay, right. Moving on then to agenda item 4, which is the Parkwood annual report. So welcome to Alex and Luke. Good to see you again. I think probably the best, I don't know, Darryl, do you want to introduce it first and then we hear from our two guests and then any questions that may be raised as a result of that. So perhaps you'd like to
Yes, thank you, Chair.
start the ball rolling.
That's the plan. So this is the annual report on Parkwood Leisure, now Lex Leisure, and I'm pleased that Luke and Alex from Lex have been able to join us tonight. They're going to be updating members on performance and the projects for the period August 2017 to July 2018, which is the contract year. Members will also be aware that Cabinet approved the change from Parkwood to Lex in May 2018, and this change has now come into effect. But it's important to note that this scrutiny is for August 2017 to July 2018 for Parkwood, and we'll be reporting on Lex's performance this time next year. Presentation will highlight performance at the 4 centres, Cockgrave, Keyworth, Bingham, and also at the Arena. And we measure performance through the Contract Management Hub, both monthly and quarterly meetings, and it's important to point out this includes random unannounced visits as well. I'm going to pull out some key statistics without stealing Luke and Alex's thunder. Usage is up at all but Keyworth. And memberships increased by 17%, which I'm told is extraordinary if you look at the industry average. And there's been over 1.2 million visits across the 4 centres in the 12-month period. Lex continue to work closely with young children, nearly 118,000 attending junior activities. And they also invest heavily in the use of ICT with electronic bookings up. And they've also introduced a fitness app and virtual spin classes too. And they also continue to work in partnership with some major partners such as Swim England, Notts County Football Club and more recently Trentbridge Cricket Club to deliver walking cricket. We're also very active in the marketing. We have a very low attrition rate of just 4%, which is less than the 5% contract target. Customer satisfaction is at 93%, which is above target and also up on the previous year. And we also carry out inspections to record the overall customer experience, which includes first impressions, reception, cleanliness, staff interaction and general maintenance. And for the last year, this averaged at 90% against a target of 80%, so well above target. I would add, though, just for anyone that uses the leisure centre, we have recently picked up a small issue around cleanliness, and we're working with Luke and his colleagues to address that as we speak. Luke and Alex are going to be carrying out a presentation. They've been asked to also make observations on squash and bowls hall usage, and also if there's any particular areas of the arena that are underutilised. They've also been asked to comment on whether there's any migration from any of the other leisure centres to the arena too. So I hope I've not stolen all your thunder. Without further ado, over to you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So all you need to say is what he said. Is that it?
We might give it a bit more detail. I think it's a bit unfair, actually, for us to say Luke and Alex are going to do a presentation, because I'm going to do one slide, so it's a bit larger here, and then I'm going to hand over to Luke. So I think my name's Alex Godfrey. I'm the regional director for the North and Midlands. Obviously, you all know Luke from being around the facility anyway. So I think what was useful last year, I gave you a little bit of context. So we talked about the industry, because it's very easy to look at things in silo and to think about you as an individual authority. And actually, there's some big shifts happening in the marketplace as well. As I say on there, and I'm not going to read verbatim all of the points on there, because you can see them for yourselves. Generally, actually, it's a positive picture in the market. We've got more people going to the gyms. About 15% of the population is actually a member of the gym at any one time. That's a member of the gym, not necessarily using the gym, because they unfortunately are two different metrics. But there is a change. There has been a real shift within the marketplace. The biggest shift within the last 5 years is the proliferation of budget clubs. So these are low-cost, low-value clubs. And that's the reason why we've got to try and differentiate ourselves from them. They've generally got pretty good equipment. They're generally pretty clean, but they come with very limited staff and resource. So we're just trying to pull out the differences of what we do from them as much as anything else. Swimming remains the country's most popular sport. It's a bit like anything. Everybody knows they should be doing it, but actually getting them to do it can be very, very challenging. So only 50% of people in the country do actually swim throughout the year. And when I say throughout the year, come at least once per year. You've clearly got, and what our statistics show is those people who come regularly swimming and are members are some of the most loyal customers that we have. But it's actually more challenging than to actually get them in, despite them understanding exactly what the benefits of swimming are. Much greater, big shift towards health and well-being. I think we're doing some really, really good work, which I won't steal Luke's thunder on. I think Daryl's probably covered off of this already. But there's some really, really positive work in that regard, and we're looking to develop that side of things as well. As much for us as a business, to be perfectly honest with you, because that is the shift in our marketplace. Health and wellbeing has a significant importance, and it's a key driver for us as a business going forwards. We talked about the app, and Luke's going to talk a bit more about the app. Actually, Rushcliffe was one of our trial contracts. There were a few things, a few lessons learned from it, definitely, but 65% of customers book online. I know, I stay in quite a few hotels in my job. I'm always travelling around the region. It's all done on an app. Everything's done on an app. We're booking flights. We have to maintain that not every customer likes to. A lot of people still like to speak to the person in front of them or make a telephone call. But as we all get the latest smartphone and all those types of things, the percentage of people I would expect to come back next year and say, actually, that 65% is now 75%, because that is how quickly it's moving. For us as an operator, there are always challenges. I think that's the same as any business. And some of those things, high inflation rates, that's both an opportunity for us in terms of fees and charges, albeit that they are capped within our contracts. But it actually means our suppliers are passing on along a lot of these costs as well. That can be a real challenge. There are some things that, unfortunately, and I mentioned their utility rates, they do go significantly above inflation. So if I gave you the picture of our gas and electricity costs over the past 6 months, our gas and utility costs have gone up about 40%. Unfortunately, unless you're signed into a long-term contract with your provider at home, you will be getting used to those letters coming through your letterbox. Now, the reasoning and justifications for that does change each time, unfortunately, but there are a number of core reasons why in the marketplace. That is a real impact. If you consider our utility costs a building of this size, it's probably in the realms of £22,000 to £25,000 a month. It's a little bit more than the 200 quid that comes through for a quarter at home. Because obviously we're heating an awful lot of water, and we've got a lot of air conditioning and those types of things. Clearly we try and manage that, but it has a massive impact. So I'm happy to answer any questions, probably worth doing it at the end, but I'll pass over to Luke and he'll give you a real run through of what's happening in the Rushcliffe contract. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Luke Collar-Luca, General Manager for the Rushcliffe contract. Fully appreciate you all went easy on me last year as it was my first presentation. I'm hoping that flows through. We'll kick off with the highlights. Rushcliffe Arena celebrated its first birthday on the 3rd of January 2018. Gave the opportunity for people to try out tasting sessions for free, members to bring down friends, family members, etc., and show everyone what Rushcliffe Arena is all about. Huge success. Significant growth in all our main key areas: fitness memberships, swimming memberships, and also swimming lessons, which I'll talk a bit in more detail later on. Launch of the new Leisure Centre booking app. Installation of Parkwood Radio to help market to our users. We've known for some time that some of our members, when they're coming into the facilities, have tunnel vision and will walk past posters, customer notices, etc. So it's another fantastic way for us to market up-and-coming events. I'd like to add as well that Rushcliffe Borough Council have seen a benefit from that, because we've been able to do radio adverts for Lark in the Park, Sunday Fun Day, most recently Tour of Britain. So that's been a nice marketing addition. Last year I spoke about the number of new members that joined, which is fantastic. Clearly second year it was all about how we retain them and making sure we keep them. We've had a company attrition rate of around 6% for memberships for a number of years. At the start of this year we said, can we beat that, can we lower it to 5%? And I'm pleased to say the Rushcliffe contract has come in at 4.22%, which shows we must be doing something right and keeping members with us. We've also introduced a number of green initiatives, everything from reducing single-use plastics, compostable cups, which Alex is modelling for us this evening, reduce of plastic cutlery in the cafes with the introduction of wooden cutlery. We may have a recycling vending machine coming into play early next year, which will mean that when customers bring used plastic bottles into the facility, they get a small receipt which allows them money off any purchases during Cafe Vita. So that will be a massive win for us if we can get that one across the line. This time last year we had 15 apprentices employed across the contract. I'm pleased to say this year that's increased to 21. We supported National Apprenticeship Week by celebrating success stories of our apprentices across the 4 centres. There's a picture of Ryan there, who joined us on a fitness apprenticeship just over 12 months ago. He's now full-time in the gym, level 2 qualified, meaning his pay's been uplifted, and he's currently working on his level 3 personal training qualification, and he's also knocking on my door for managerial opportunities. So it's really good to see that some of the apprentices that start in at entry level progress throughout the business. 32 members of staff currently working on national MVQs across a number of areas such as customer service, sales, also gym and personal training. And we've seen significant capital investments across all 4 centres. We've had 7 or 8 new stations in the fitness suite at Rushcliffe Arena here to cater for the demand. But we've also seen new kit added at Cotgrave, Bingham Leisure Centre on the fitness floor. More resistance kit will be arriving in December this year. Bingham Leisure Centre's had new lane ropes. All sites have benefited from new aerobic equipment, mats, body bars, etc. And again, that's to keep up with the demand in our group exercise programme. In terms of the overall key usage statistics, similar to last year, and I'll do a comparison, over 1,231,000 visits, 845. That's an increase of about 147,000 visits across the contract. In terms of gym and swim members, this time last year we were around 4,840. I'm pleased to say that here and now we're over the 5,600 mark. With regards to swimming lessons, this time last year about 2,800, now well over the 3,200 mark, and that continues to grow. You may remember that we introduced Course Pro, a development software to help us grow the scheme. It's fair to say now we've got over 12 months worth of data, it helps us make informed decisions about how we grow the programme to all 4 centres. Group exercise this time last year about 116,000 visits, well over the 126,000 mark. Over 300 classes on a weekly basis. Absolute beast of a programme. Takes a lot of time in managing, covering, making sure the equipment's right, the instructors turn up on time, etc. So there's more to discuss on group exercise later. In terms of minor accidents, this time last year we had 308. So we have seen a slight increase to 322 this year. I'm comfortable with the extra 147,000 visitors we've had through the door. That clearly offsets that small increase. With regards to page views, to leisurecentre.com, bit of a quirk in the statistics this year. That's actually gone backwards by about 20,000 clicks. We're not too concerned on that. That's mainly down to the growth of social media and Facebook. We've grown an extra 1,000 likes compared to this time last year, so we've got over 5,200 across the contract this year. And we're far better at managing those Facebook pages. Facebook is instant. We get more and more people direct messaging us or writing on our walls, and that it's far easier for customers to get in touch and keep up to date via Facebook than it is through going onto our homepage on leisurecentre.com. In terms of online bookings, 173,886, huge increase of about 35,000 visits compared to the same period last year, and a lot of that is down to the development of the app. Fantastic for us because it takes pressure off our front of house teams and phones ringing. It means they can serve customers face to face, and the booking system is far easier. Overall, the headline of usage up 147,000 visits, as I said. Unfortunately, Keyworth, that's actually gone backwards to the tune of about 7,000 visits. Again, we're not too concerned about Keyworth going backwards. From the membership demographics, we actually know that there's more and more customers from Keyworth that were members of Keyworth are travelling into West Bridgford to use Rushcliffe Arena. Exactly the same at Cotgrave Leisure Centre. More and more people, particularly the spinners, since we've opened here, the spinning at Cotgrave has dropped, and there's more and more people coming into West Bridgford to use this facility. And there's also some of Bingham Leisure Centre's early morning swimmers coming to use the pool here as well. Bingham Leisure Centre, for a particularly old building, has done really well on increasing visits, mainly because of the events they run at weekends, particularly external ones on the athletics track, netball courts, tennis courts. Activity programming, action-packed as you'd expect for a 12-month period. You mentioned the events, any sporting events from karate gradings, netball, tennis tournaments, baby markets, wrestling, you name it, it's pretty much been delivered from the 4 centres. Rushcliffe Borough Council have benefited from the use of the Bowls Hall out of season, where we boarded it over, and the Young Conference was held, which was really well attended. We continue to work with partners such as Sport England on This Girl Can campaign. In October it launched its third wave, Fit Got Real, so we're busy collating good news stories of females participating in sport and physical activity across the centres. Darryl mentioned walking cricket. This time last year it was a simple pilot study. Got talking to Ian from Trentbridge off one of the Active Rushcliffe meetings, and I'm pleased to say that's now sustainable. Numbers have increased week on week, and it's now regular block booking. In terms of GP referrals, 176 in the service period, an increase of 35 compared to last year, and we've continued to work tirelessly with health professionals, doctors, surgeries, etc. to refer more patients through to us. In terms of blood donations, this is an interesting one. You may remember in the local press recently, Nottingham was short of blood donors. They were already at Bingham Leisure Centre and Cotgrave Leisure Centre. We've welcomed them back at Rushcliffe Arena, and we've received 623 blood donations in the service period, which has improved the lives of approximately 1,800 patients. Great booking for us to work with the NHS. We have to be careful because we clearly can't be kicking out our weekly block bookings every other week. So we try and make use of the Bowls Hall again during its downtime to make sure that we can accommodate these bookings. Again, last year I spoke about the importance and the benefits of us running courses in-house or from one of the 4 centres. I'm pleased to say that we qualified 65 new lifeguards in the last 12 months, and also 32 swimming teachers on the level 1 or level 2. We've also seen growth in the number of fans participants. That's a free access for national sports people. Again, there was a question last year about how people access the scheme. We did a big press release before Christmas last year, and we've had over 30 additional athletes on the scheme during the service period. Growth in the number of junior pump attendants, that's juniors using the gym in a supervised manner. Really good for us, getting juniors active, getting them used to gym etiquette, how to use the equipment, and the hope is that in the future they'll become our student members and our full paying members further down the line. We mentioned the Bowls Club. I think it's fair to say it's the most underutilised part of Rushcliffe Arena since we've opened. We've worked tirelessly with the club to launch disability bowls, a number of umbrella sessions and open days. Membership stands around the 150 mark as we speak, which has gone backwards from last year where we were around 179. We try and make use of the Bowls Club outside of bowls, so in the evenings we have blue transitions mats that we roll across the green, and that means we can have judo, athletics, martial arts clubs making use of the space. Clearly we don't like any space empty while we're open. We'd rather have someone using it and making use of the facilities. In terms of the squash club, really proactive club based here, 111 members, over 34 juniors, which is a thriving section between our 3 to 5 slot, 16 ladies booked on the ladies coaching every Monday night, heavily used courts evenings and weekends, also lunchtime as well. And recently we've changed the opening times at Rushcliffe Arena, so we open half an hour earlier at 6 in the morning instead of 6:30. And since we've done that, we have more and more squash players playing first thing in the morning, as well fitting in a game before work. We've also delivered Christmas pantos and Aquazen Christmas parties during December, which is notoriously a difficult month for us. Footfall drops off from about the 15th because people are more interested in Christmas parties, mince pies, shots of Baileys, etc. So it's really important for us to put on events to drive footfall, secondary spend, ticket sales, food, drinks, etc. Working with local partners such as Notts County Mind Initiative, based at Cotgrave and Rushcliffe Arena. Pleased to say they've renewed booking forms for 2019 as well. New partnership formed with British Gymnastics to deliver gymnastics sessions from our centres again next year. Again, we can use Course Pro that's helped us manage the swimming lesson programme and make use of this software for gymnastics as well. And a full review of the new member journey, and again that goes back to last year, all those new joiners. We've reviewed the process in which people join, meaning that we make sure they have a good sound induction, try and book them a programme review so they commit in advance, 7-day call, 30-day call, to make sure they have a real sense of belonging when they take out a membership with us. As I say, membership-wise, over the 5,600 mark, I just wanted to pull out the swimming-only memberships here. It's not just the gym side of things. With regards to swim-only, this this time last year we had 340 swim-only memberships. As we stand here and now, we're over the 570 mark, and we've tried to do everything we can to celebrate the benefits and market the benefits of swimming. Off the back of last year's presentation, I think within 24 hours, didn't have time to rest. I was on BBC Radio Nottingham explaining why Rushcliffe Arena, or the Rushcliffe contract swimming participation had gone back by 3%. Last year I covered that nationally it had gone back 19%, so it was a difficult one to defend, but it was in line with, well, it was far less than national average. So this year we've worked really hard on celebrating and sharing good news from anything wetside related. Group exercise, as I say, massive programme now. We've actually installed virtual in the spin studio here at Rushcliffe Arena. That's to keep up with leisure industry trends. Before we had that, outside of the instructor-led classes, that room would lie empty with all that kit in there until the next spin class. By offering virtual, it means we can have back-to-back classes throughout the day, make more use of that room, but also it means from a member's point of view, they don't have to be waiting until lunchtime or the evening to attend a class. It gives them more choice to fit in, especially if they're working shift work or night work, so it provides more choice. Off the back of the installing the spin studio, we've also launched it into the main studio so that members can try virtual body pump, body attack, Pilates, etc. Really important to us, and the feedback's been great. It's not for everyone, but it's aimed mainly at getting people who haven't tried group exercise into a class so they can experience it. There can be quite a barrier to group exercise, concerned that there's over 20 other lycra-clad individuals that have gone the week before, the month before. Nice way for people to try group exercise without being too intimidated. Bring a Baby classes last year were a huge success, so what we wanted to develop this year was the pre and postnatal offering, meaning that when ladies are pregnant they can exercise with us, when baby's been delivered they can continue to exercise with us, and it's really good from a social aspect. They all have a tea, coffee afterwards, etc. And it's been a really important market for us to tap into. Aquafit, again, along the wet side and the promotion of wet side events, we've actually had 3 additional Aquafit classes put on the programme over the last 12 months. And if I'm being completely honest, Aquafit hasn't changed for the last 5 or 10 years, so it's just really interesting that there's more and more people wanting to get into Aquafit. It's probably the class I worry about the most because it's the one that my mum rings me to book every week. Gym floor workshops, again based at engaging on the gym floor. Last year we talked about the Queen X circuit classes, the small circuit classes for up to 5 people, aimed at educating members on how to use the equipment. We've worked with British Rowing and also British Triathlon to launch Go Row and Go Tri on the gym floor. Really good classes, and what you tend to see is the rest of the gym looking over for that half hour to see how it's going, and then as soon as the class finishes after 5 minutes and it's all settled down, they migrate over to that particular piece of equipment and give it a go. And going back to the new member journey, trying group exercise actually creates stickier members. So when people do join and they tell us their fitness goals, we're trying to signpost them to particular group exercise classes in the hope that they'll give that a go and they'll stay with us for longer. With regards to the swimming lesson growth strategy, I'll just touch on this very quickly. We've got now 12 months worth of data to help us make informed decisions. We've got far better on the marketing of it. We used to post out very generic posts saying Aquazone space is now available. We now list the times, the days, the stages to help people decide when they can fit in and where. The crash courses, they're promoted far in advance of the holiday periods to make sure that parents can fit in activities and plan what to do when the kids are off school. And also the waiting lists, moving on to point 2, focusing on programming and layout. We've actually changed how we deliver some of the classes. Instead of having 1 class in the learner pool, we'll put a lane rope across and have 2 classes in at the same time, meaning that we can double the amount of kids on our scheme or the spaces available on our scheme during the busy periods. We've also tried to mimic what's worked well in the gym, so we've always ran Member of the Month to recognise success stories of people that have lost weight, toned up and really made the most of the membership. So we've now introduced Swimmer of the Month to help again recognise success stories that have for kids on our swimming lessons. Focusing on increasing quality goes back to that upskilling our workforce with level 1, level 2 courses, and through that partnership with Swim England, we've been able to do additional CPD courses in parent and babies classes, and we've most recently launched dementia-friendly swimming lessons at Cotgrave Leisure Centre to help tap into niche markets on the programme. That 34% of inconvenience statistic in your top right-hand corner, if I can just give you a bit of an example on that. Tom has his stage 1 classes on a Monday at 5 o'clock, and great news for Tom, he's actually progressed up to the stage 2 level. So Tom and his mum go to reception to find out when they can book into stage 2, but unfortunately we don't have a stage 2 till Monday 6 o'clock, Wednesday 4 and Wednesday 5:30. That leaves Tom and his mum with a bit of a dilemma, because Tom does saxophone on a Tuesday, football Wednesday, cricket Friday, and all of his other siblings, various other activities throughout the week. So it's quite a big project, but what we're hoping to do over the next 12 months is to have between 4 and 6 our main slots every half hour, duckling right the way through up to stage 7, meaning that is seamless transition from stage 1 to 2 to 3 upwards, so that Tom and his mum don't have to factor in what else is going on during the week. So that will be a big project for us, but we're hopeful that will help address the inconvenience factor. In terms of poolside events, our biggest one was Oceans of Fun. We gave local kids the opportunity to swim with Olympians, and that was off the back of the Rio Olympics. Grant Turner, Katie Clark and Fran Clayton were excellent. They delivered an hour wetside talk in the sports hall around water safety and the benefits of swimming and what it's like to be at the Olympics. Before going through onto poolside and giving kids the opportunity to do synchronised swimming, water polo, CPR, and then ending with swimming with an Olympian. We had over 180 children attend. Great feedback from kids and parents that watched, so we're really pleased with how that ran at Cotgrave and here at Rushcliffe Arena. The swim-a-thon that we deliver every year, year on year, we did some PR off the back of that to celebrate the success of the 60 participants. We also threw a staff team in there, so we've just tried to do everything we can wetside to improve awareness of the pools. Swim 400, we were a pilot study for delivering this with Swim England last year. We held an in-depth focus feedback group with them, where we were able to say the lessons learned, how we think the initiative could be done better, and off the back of that feedback, I'm pleased to say that Parkwood was shortlisted for Wetside Operator of the Year. Unfortunately, we didn't win it, but it was nice to know that the Rushcliffe contract played a big part in that nomination. I won't touch on all the marketing campaigns, a whole host of stuff over the last 12 months. It would be remiss of me not to mention the GDPR legislation changes. That's changed how we operate in a number of areas. We've looked at cleansing our databases to make sure we don't fall foul of any breaches. So that's been quite a big change, and part of the app launch was to help us boost referrals. At the click of a couple of buttons, a member can refer anyone in their address book very quickly, and then that member will receive a 7-day pass that they can come into the centre and redeem, and they start the sales process. Before that, we would ask the member that's joining for contact details of parents, friends, family that may want to join, so we'd make that contact. Clearly that would be a massive breach of GDPR legislation and rules. In terms of online performance, we sold 511 online. That's an increase of about 90 memberships compared to the same period last year. Whilst we're really pleased with the online performance and it's a good offering, through looking at the member journey, our average length of stay for a normal member is about 9 to 10 months, which is very good. In terms of online joiners, that's far less, it's about 4.5, 5 months. So that shows us that anyone joins online, we need to make a big fuss when they do come into the centre to pick up their membership card, to make sure they get a good tour of the facility, they book in for the programme review, book in for the induction, so that we really make them feel part of the leisure centres. The Fixed and Flexion memberships will continue, and I'll just touch on the Fit Street and Fit for Business. 2 marketing campaigns we've run for a number of years, but we've actually taken it to social media in the last 12 months, meaning that when the staff go out to post 7-day passes through street doors, by posting it on social media, we'll take a picture of the street name, and then that engages with the local community who can like the post and make recommendations of where we go next. And we get some really good buy-in from that. and some really good return on people redeeming the 7-day passes. The app launch pretty much covered already. Quite a scary statistic, but on average we look at our phones 180 times a day. What does that tell you? Everyone expects everything to be on the mobile. It was introduced in June 2018, as Alex said, as a trial for the Rushcliffe contract. Pleased to say that's now going live across the rest of the company. From a customer's point of view, they can record their workouts, they can take part in challenges, but they can also earn reward points. So when they get to a certain amount, they might get a free tea or coffee in the cafe or from the vending machine. We've also extended it to Rufford Abbey, and we manage the other side of Nottingham, and we're trying to get Ed Walton Golf Course on there as well, so that we can reward our members with a free driving range session down there at Ed Walton Golf. It's improved retention for us, it's improved online booking for customers, and it's also increased the number of referrals. In the news, particularly the Westbridge Wire, myself and the leader often have a plastic cup or a recyclable cup, seems to be the common one. Mentioned the fans package, Refill Rushcliffe, technically outside of the service period, but the Tour of Britain was a fantastic event to be involved in. Rushcliffe Arena were down at the start line with a What Bike Challenge, handing out 7-day passes to local residents. But also we had Ollie the Octopus, the mascot, at the very start. Rob and his teams at Copgrave and Keyworth were along the route as well, so it's a fantastic way to engage with the local community. We had really good feedback from Keyworth and Copgrave Parish Council because we painted the bikes yellow in the run-up to the event. I wasn't too impressed with the £100 uniform I had to spend the following week because they painted everything yellow as well as the bikes, but we got there in the end. And we've also recently done the millionth customer at Rushcliffe Arena. Great success story. Jacob Austin won £500 years free membership, and he was a really fitting winner. Trains with us 4 or 5 times a week, brings the kids swimming at weekend, and he was absolutely delighted with that prize. So a really nice story for us as well as Rushcliffe Borough Council. We've put together a number of business development case studies, and that's an internal thing where we've tried to share best practice across the company. Rushcliffe has submitted over 25 to the rest of the company, and that ranges from anything from talented athletes to community projects. The £5,000 we raised for Macmillan Cancer Support with the spin-a-thon here. One at the top for Bigham Leisure Centre and the joint use working with Tootle School, taking on 3 sixth formers who were able to earn part-time money outside of their studies. And also the disability work we're doing at Copgrave Leisure Centre with the Theatre Trust partnership, and also the Rushcliffe Games, which is a staple part of our disability sports panel. Customer satisfaction, as Darryl mentioned, 93%, 3% increase on last year. Staff attitude is the highest performing area, and that tends to be aimed at Group X and swimming instructors that are obviously teaching in front of a captive audience. I did have a bit more on the member demographics. I'll just touch on this quickly. Expressions membership split, 49% male, 51% female. As Alex mentioned, the budget gyms, that average age has increased slightly over recent years, and that's because the students, they're going towards Nottingham City Centre to pay £10–15 a month membership instead of obviously training at the local leisure centres. Clearly we can't compete on a £10–15 price point, but what we do is sell the benefits of the whole membership package, being able to exercise at 4 centres, group exercise included, swimming included, which are our big selling points. Member demographic map, not much more to tell you other than it gets more clustered every year. People out as far as Newark-on-Trent, Loughborough and East Midlands Airport. I suspect those are people that work in Nottingham that drive in to train either before or after work. Partnership working, a whole host of national governing bodies, England Squash Racquetball, Indoor Bowls Association, Triathlon. We've done a lot of work with helping Ed Walton promote various up-and-coming events down at the golf course. That's helped Simon and the team drive footfall down there, just from us simply posting out what's up and coming on our Facebook pages. Lifetime with the increase in apprenticeships. Close working with Rushcliffe Borough Council. Too many initiatives to mention. Free Tap, the Refill Rushcliffe, Tour of Britain, the Young Project, I'm delivering the Sportsperson of the Year award tomorrow as part of the Rushcliffe Awards, which I'm looking forward to. I was interviewed for the scrutiny review that Rushcliffe Borough Council had commissioned earlier in the year. I told them he didn't buy it, which was good. Emergency Rest Centre training with Notts County Council. That's off the back of the unfortunate Manchester bombings and terrorist attacks, making sure that we're all geared up for rest centre training if and when required. We did actually have to use that at Bingham a few months ago because Bingham ran out of water with a burst water pipe with Severn Trent, and luckily that plan worked seamlessly to get in touch with Dave and myself to make sure that we could open Bingham Car Park to offer water to local residents. So, carbon reduction commitment, already mentioned the single-use plastics, but we continue to monitor usage, utility trends through everything from CHP reports, replacement of LED lightings, monthly dashboards, weekly dashboards, which has involved us coming in at 2 in the morning to make sure we can identify what pieces of kit are coming on at 2 instead of 5, 6 just before we open. Triad alerts just before winter, which again will be the same in the run up to Christmas this year. Last year there was a quick question on upgrades, how we upgrade the facilities. Bingham Leisure Centre has had new rubber flooring in the fitness suite, which is far better than the carpet that was down previously. A bit like at home, unfortunately, if you only do one part of the area, it shows how poor the walls are. So now we're doing a redeck on the Bingham Leisure Centre fitness suite walls in December. The middle one is Cockbrave Leisure Centre Sports Hall. That should be blue, in line with Badminton England, and that is far cleaner, more vibrant, a lot more modern since we've done that. And Rushcliffe Arena's now got a two-tone grey around all the corridors and main areas of where the customers walk. I think the initial paint we used was too chalky, and it just showed up too many scuff marks. So that dark grey has glue in, it's the stuff they use in school, and it's far easier to wipe down. Keyworth Leisure Centre, very small upgrade with the brickwork foyer, just to give it a more modern look as you enter. And the two biggest projects that have been completed by Rushcliffe Borough Council since we opened, obviously the refurb of the Bowls Hall, which was feedback from the Bowls Club after opening, and by far the biggest one, and the one that causes the most issues or the most complaints, was the car park last year, which is fantastic that we've got an extra 80 bays to accommodate users of the centre. Continuing improvement and the way forward, so what have we got planned for next year? Continue to monitor trends within the industry as well as our local competitors. Further capital investment in 2019, already mentioned some of the kit, but we've got a particular focus on access control. The gate and the PIN code system is open to abuse, so there's potential of us looking at thumbprint or facial recognition with money in the budget for next year. We just need to decide how it will work and whether it's feasible. Mentioning the green recycling initiative with the plastic bottle vending machine. ISO 45001 new health and safety accreditation. Rushcliffe Arena had its stage 2 assessment a week and a half ago. Really in-depth audit, and hopefully will be the first leisure operator provider to gain that qualification. Further partnership with national governing bodies with Lifetime. Great focus on member attrition rates and retention, as already mentioned. Development of Parkwood 2.0. This is the Managing Director's new way of working to create a slicker, more streamlined, more in-depth Parkwood. For me personally, that's been quite an important and quite an exciting project to be in. Same for Rob and Dave as well at Cockbrave, Keyworth and Bingham. All been with the company for some time, so we think we can play quite a big part in helping the company review processes, procedures to make it slicker and more advanced. And finally, the involvement with Rushcliffe Borough Council and the Bingham Leisure Strategy. I sit on the Bingham Growth Board. Really exciting times ahead for the people at Bingham. So that's enough for me talking. Does anyone have any questions?
Well, thank you, Luke. That was very comprehensive. Right, bye. No, it was very comprehensive indeed. I've no doubt that people have got questions, although it's an impressive presentation that you've given us, for sure. I'll just start things off. Have you got... have you got our report? I was going to refer to page 14. Sorry, no, on our on our agenda. I'll ask the question while Daryl's looking for it. It refers to the year-on-year usage.
Yep.
And I noticed that last year's usage is pretty identical to the usage in 13/14. So we went down and back up again in between because obviously there was all the Rushcliffe Leisure Centre and us.
You went from 5 sites to 4 sites. That's the big difference.
Yeah, but I'm just thinking of the year-on-year usage. I would still have expected that 17/18 would have been a lot higher than 13/14.
I think it's pretty much that shift because obviously the contract's gone from 5 sites down to 4 sites in time. There is no doubt an element of the dual use element of Rushcliffe, the old Rushcliffe Leisure Centre as well. So that will have had an impact on those children not using the facilities during the day as well.
Rushcliffe Leisure Centre used to have an average of about 30,000 visits on a monthly basis. So clearly, obviously, we're not counting what was at the road as well as the old Rushcliffe Arena previously.
Right. Okay. Fine. Right. Councillor Phillips.
Thank you. Just on that usage question, is the data collected by the cards as you swipe in?
Depends for what activity. So this goes back to our access control. For gym, swim, to get via the gate or get through PIN code, then yes. But there's also club bookings considered in there. So for clubs that hire our sports hall or our studios for martial arts, etc., their usage is sort of collected every sort of month on a monthly basis by us speaking to the clubs and also poking our head through the door to see how many kids are during that particular activity. The reason why we want to focus on access control, the budget gyms have sort of pods, if you like, that you walk through and you're able to access the facility. Clearly for a leisure centre it's quite different because of swimming lessons, for example. One week it might be mum that drops off the child that they have to take their kid through to get them changed. The following week it might be dad. So I think in the leisure industry no one has actually got a leisure centre down to a T in terms of the access control, and that's why we quite like to be at the forefront of using technology for that.
Yeah, because I'm a member of, I come here quite a lot and I don't actually use my card. Often the disabled gate is open, or people just push it open.
Yeah.
And by the time I've gone to the changing room and to go into the gym, I don't want to be carrying my card around with me because I'll leave it somewhere and people are in and out, so I can just walk in. So other people could be doing the same, so you're probably missing some of your data there.
Yeah, I think there's no perfect solution, there's no perfect storm, unfortunately. I think Luke's absolutely right. I don't think the design necessarily always helps us here as a particular centre, but that's the reason why there's that secondary point on the door. It's not an exact science, but general usage trends is we're fairly comfortable. They are in line with the sort of leisure industry stats. Even down to things like, generally a badminton court, we would call a badminton court 3 people, because if people are playing singles or doubles. So there's some general parameters that we work to.
Thank you. Yeah. And then, Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Chair. I'm interested in strategic objective 2, which is developing services for young people, and that's, if I've understood it correctly, just a target number. What are your thoughts on the usefulness of that as a success criteria? I.e., just counting the number of children or young people to whom you deliver, versus us trying to make some kind of assessment of whether or not that delivery ends up being sustainable or ongoing.
I think the difficulty in that regard is actually the leisure centres are just a small proportion of physical activity as a whole. So the difficulty for us is that we have them come in, and we probably have the more active children that come into our centres already. And actually the biggest challenge that we've got is getting new people in, new children into the centres. So the difficulty is we can track them to a certain extent of the journey, but we can't track them for the whole of the journey.
I don't know if you understand what I mean in that regard.
I think so, and I get it. It's not easy.
No.
I just wonder about, is that the best metric for us to pick in terms of assessing success? You know, because we could be getting young person in who comes once, and it could be even worse. They could be turned off by the experience that they have, but we count them as a success because they were here. Whereas it's not if they don't come back, or they don't go on to join the athletics club taster session. You know, that's all about then getting them to the athletics club, right? So
I think if I could use the example on swimming, that journey that you mentioned about making it progressive and consistent, with regards to swimming lessons, our biggest concern is that kids get to stage 1, stage 2, they've built water confidence, but they haven't really learned a particular stroke or can do a particular stroke well. Mum and dad think, right, okay, well they've got all the other sporting activities throughout the rest of the week. They've kind of got to stage 1, so they know the basics of swimming. Whereas actually, swimming in the pool here across one width of the pool is very different to going on holiday to the beach and going paddling in the sea. So what we're trying to do is make sure that that drop off after stage 1 becomes far less, and we keep them on the scheme up to stage 3, 4, 5, all the way up to 7 if possible.
I think it's fairly clear that there's certain activities it's much easier to track if it is your general club, because a lot of the usage of the centres isn't actually us running the activities. You've got a lot of judo clubs. I think you mentioned athletics club probably at Bingham. It is very challenging for us to gather that information. So whilst it's probably not a perfect metric, there is some flexibility in that number as well, in terms of we are using assumptions in order to get to it, but we would be able to see a general trend in the number of users. We're more than happy to work with officers in order to try and work out if there's a better way of doing it in the future.
I think what you're probably asking is whether we could, rather than just pick a number, is whether there's some sort of outcome-based measure. So children coming in, do we then see a reduction in obesity or whatever? Not quite sure how easy that'd be to track, but I'd agree it's certainly something we could take away and potentially look at for next year.
Councillor Bailey.
Thank you. I noticed that you have water safety talks throughout June and July to local schools, which I think is a really brilliant idea. Is it when the schools come in here for their swimming sessions, or does someone go out to the individual local schools?
We normally go out to the individual schools, and the perfect opportunity is during assemblies, where we can do sort of 15-20 minute water safety talk, and that's usually well received and engages with the kids, and it's quite a nice one for the schools to be able to offer, because we go into the schools and deliver them without them having to worry about sort of any of the other content. So yeah, we've run that for a number of years.
I think that's a brilliant idea, because every summer you hear of tragedies where youngsters, it's hot weather, they go into the water, and every now and again one comes a real cropper. So great that you do that. Thank you.
Councillor Bilsall.
First question, the strategic objectives, are they set by you, or are they contractually set by our officers?
Set by, they're contractually set. We did review them every year around this time, ready for April next year. So the strategic objectives are primarily set by Rushden Borough Council, and we feed into that.
Okay. Related to that, on strategic objective 7, it's a financial objective, but there's no real target, so it might not be your answer really, it might be an answer for our officers. Why haven't we got a financial target set? It just said reduce revenue costs. I mean, normally we would see in business a target set for that. Could you give me any indication on what that might be?
I think the reason we've not got a target there as such is actually if you look across, it's green on my computer, the management fees that we pay, there's been a reduction year on year. What we'll actually be reporting this time next year is Parkwood are now paying us to run the leisure centre for us, rather than us paying them a management fee. They're actually now paying us about £30,000 a year to to run it. So to a certain extent, we don't actually need a target because they're actually paying us to run it now.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with
No,
that, actually.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
You know, where are we pushing ourselves to manage that contract to be more efficiently? If there's no target against it, it's just a general improvement. It is managed. So, and I think that's shown in the figures that the numbers come down, and then, you know, when we went from 5 to 4, the contract was renegotiated. But there's also certain things that that number could actually go up again as well as down, depending on the market conditions. So I think Alex alluded earlier to utilities costs that can be volatile, or if we asked Parkwood to do something different within the contract, that would come with a yes, but we need to renegotiate the fees. So it's a kind of a constantly moving picture, this, that the contracts team are looking at Parkwood's figures and what the fee should be on either side. But I do accept your point about why don't you have a target to aim for, and I'm quite happy to take that back to have a discussion, and perhaps we can come back to you on that one.
Yeah, if we could please, because I think it's quite important, you know, in any commercial discussion, just to say we're going to improve financial viability and reduce overall costs and improve value, I think is extremely important to be able to have a target. I'm sure my colleague next to me, who's involved in purchasing, you know, when you set a contract with a supplier over a 5-year period or 10-year period, there'd be agreements to reduce costs over that 10-year period by a given amount. So you can see where I'm.
If I can just come back to you, if you that was actually renegotiated. So we are due to receive additional income in 18-19, and then it increases again to 120,000 until the contract ends. So that was renegotiated at the point that we went from 5 to 4, and then this site reopened.
Yeah.
And that was very complex negotiations at the time, but that would still be, you know, constantly monitored.
Yeah.
Do you want to add to that?
I think, yeah, so from my perspective, there's been a couple of evolutions, I would probably call them, within the contract. I can assure you, first of all, that I manage Luke by a lot of those measures that you're talking about in terms of the finances, and we do provide them on a monthly basis, so you do actually get a copy of our audited accounts every month. It's very difficult because ultimately you are in a contract, whilst there's, I'm sure, clauses within that contract in order to manage risk and reduce. I think part of the outsourcing of the leisure services to a private contractor like ourselves is that a lot of that risk that's associated is actually passed on to us. So we've got to take the rough with the smooth in that regard as well. So where our utility costs are increasing or our staffing costs are increasing, we've got to find innovative ways in order to actually mitigate that.
Yeah, and I totally accept that, and I think I'm making a point really, so
Yeah.
I won't labour it any further. If we could have some more information on that would be great.
Well,
And-
we can take that as an action, basically.
As an action, yeah, absolutely, as an action. Final question. It's a very simple one, actually. If you've been successful over the last few years of having 90% plus 90% customer satisfaction, yet your targets are set, is it 85%?
It's 80%.
80%. 80% in terms of customer satisfaction is a very low target these days. So what can we push the targets up? And if the target is higher, logic says that will drive greater improvement. So I'd like to see that we've got a higher target. I don't know what everyone else thinks on that topic.
I think I can assure you that the target will certainly sort of reflect actual performance, and so give them something to at least try and stick to, or even achieve above that.
Brilliant. Thank you. That's
Yeah.
an action, I think, Jim.
Good. Yeah. Okay. Councillor Mrs Jeffers.
Thank you. I'd like to say what an excellent report it was. I thought it was very well done, so congratulations. Now, I noticed that there were referrals from doctors, and can I ask how they are monitored? Do you have to send a report in, or does the doctor follow it up? What happens at the end of it?
So the process from start to finish is the patient gets a slip from the doctor that they bring through to our reception desk. They need to book in with a GP referral qualified instructor so that they can have an assessment, a PARQ, to see which equipment they can use, what exercise they can and can't do. And we report on the GP referral figures every quarter, but we pull that information together at site level on a monthly basis. So yeah, there's more to come. We've linked up with Live Well Rushcliffe to improve the GP referral scheme. They're actually renting a room from one of the treatment rooms here at Rushcliffe Arena, so that referral couldn't be easier when they come in and meet a health coordinator from Live Well Rushcliffe. They step out onto the gym floor and then they can engage with our instructors. So we're working at the minute to upskill two additional members of staff to be GP referral qualified, and then we'll go at the surgeries again in the new year in the hope that we can increase that market that are being referred from health professionals.
That's excellent. Thank you.
Can I just start with Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I just ask a question about your accidents? You've said that you're quite happy with the amount of accidents that you're having because of the increase of people that you've got, and I know a lot of these are probably minor trips and slips around wet areas. But could you tell me what is the most major accident that has been reported within these figures across the 4 centres?
Yeah, the biggest accident we've had here is in the pre-shower area. That's by far that resulted in a riddle. Customer slipped over as you go through onto poolside. We raised concerns of that area and the drainage of that area when we opened. It went through the snagging process with the builders and Rushcliffe Borough Council to address our concerns. We had the builders back that said no, the drain was fit for purpose. Our concern was obviously having those showers on with a small drain created almost a third swimming pool during peak times, and unfortunately a lady did slip on that. She hurt her back. We've obviously notified our insurance company, and that sort of accident is currently shelved or pending, if you like. So a potential claim could come off the back of that. So yeah, that's probably our biggest accident we've had in the last 12 months.
Do you want me to just add, if I can add a little bit to that? We are working with Luke on that issue, and we will be making some changes to the swimming pool area. Those pre-swim showers are not used at the moment, are they? We're looking at changing the way that people actually go into the swimming pool, putting, I believe, a new sort of a wall bit door area in, and that specification's just been worked on as we speak. So there's some works that we're looking to carry out over the next couple of months. We're going to do some bits just before Christmas when the pool will be closed. We're doing some improvements to around the sort of play, the children's splash area, but we'll also be doing those improvements to that pre-swim shower area, so that situation should not arise again.
Okay. Can I just ask, because obviously there was concern, I know we keep focusing a lot on the arena because it's sort of the bigger, higher profile and the one where there's been lots of changes. But obviously, prior to moving in, there were all the concerns about the bowling hall and also the squash usage as well. So I suppose just a double question or a tandem question, if you like. I can't remember now what the membership, bowls membership was prior to us closing. So I thought it was 250. Yeah. So, what's your perception of the usage of the bowling hall compared with prior? And then in terms of the squash courts, what's your perception of the usage? And we had the sliding walls put in.
Yeah.
So what's the sort of percentage usage of squash compared with, you know, do you use it for other events, other functions when you move the walls?
Yeah, we haven't moved the walls much. We've done it only on a handful of occasions. We've had mini conferences in there. What we didn't want to do is run children's parties in there, for example. We used to have that at Rushcliffe Leisure Centre, and that caused issue when people did come to play squash and there's leftover cake on the walls, etc. So one area that we may look to utilise the squash courts, I mentioned they're really busy evenings, weekends and lunchtime. I mentioned the partnership with British Gymnastics. We could open that wall, the movable walls, to have a big space to offer gymnastic sessions there, particularly in the morning or mid-afternoon, which fits in with juniors that aren't obviously at preschool or school. So there's an opportunity there for us to make use of the squash court space without affecting the squash provision at the high peak times.
I think the difficulty we have with squash is it is very, very well used at peak times, and the times that we'd love additional spaces is at peak times as well. And that's the challenge and the difficulty with it. But actually, to be honest with you, here the squash club have been very involved in having those discussions and actually speaking with Luke about the ways that they can get more usage, whether that's as a lunchtime or in the morning. So from that perspective, I think we've got real confidence that the squash numbers will continue to go forwards.
Right. I do remember, especially when the very hot weather and the fire doors were open in the bowling hall, and you could see there were other activities. I remember seeing fencing and various things.
Yeah.
So, is the bowling hall? How often is it standing empty, unused?
The very, very difficult thing about bowls is a seasonal sport.
Yes.
And a seasonal sport indoors, because actually, you know, from the period of probably May until September, it's only used for other activities. It's not used for bowls at all. I mean, in terms of the winter period, Luke, when it is used, I don't know if you want to give some.
Yeah, so as I say, worked really hard with the new committee on the club to improve participation in bowls, umbrella sessions, open days. We spend more time, I think it's fair to say, with the bowls club trying to help and support and improve numbers than we do with any other club outside of any of the four centres. It remains a challenge, and I think the new flooring was almost the final piece of the jigsaw to be able to say this facility is fantastic, and if you're not happy with this bowls facility, then I don't think we can meet the expectations of the bowlers. Because originally they wanted their own tea and coffee area, they wanted their own meeting room, they believed that the snooker room should have been their meet and greet area. Clearly, if we'd done that, that would be another waste of the room. Or not, sorry, not waste of the room. Another underutilised room. But let me do this.
Again, to paraphrase for the people.
Yeah, we've
You raised that from the record.
Sorry. But we have pushed the martial arts in there, obviously, with the blue transition mats. As I say, we don't like any room with any building lying empty. And I would say about the bowls hall, it is a massive space.
Yeah.
It's a huge space, so for that to be empty,
It's the one that's causing the most problem in terms of paying for its keep, isn't it? Per square footage or whatever criteria you use.
Yeah. I think if you look at the general trends, there's more bowls closing than opening at the moment.
Okay, all right. Well, yeah, certainly. Everybody just has to.
It's a facility, a part of our specification. We'll continue to manage it and continue to work with the club, and we'll continue to try and bring in some juniors. But it is an ageing sport as well. That's unfortunately the reality.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Any further comments, questions? I mean, have we got the actions noted? It's been difficult to have a recommendation other than to welcome your presentation, and obviously leisure provided by Rushcliffe through you is an extremely important element to the lifestyle in Rushcliffe, so it's tremendously important, and I think we always have a few niggles, but I think generally we can be welcoming and thanking you for providing that facility within the borough of Rushcliffe, and long may it continue. And obviously, when anybody who can think of things to improve things, then obviously we always want to be striving to improve. We never want to be complacent. We want to be always at the top of the game.
Yeah, it's definitely, and you know, it's a really good relationship we feel that we've got with the council at the moment here. We continually invest in the facilities, whether that's in equipment or the buildings themselves, because you're right, one of the big things is taking your eye off the ball and being complacent, and from our perspective, we just can't accept that.
Yeah, great. Okay, well, thanks very much indeed for taking the time to come and talk to us. We'll let you off for good behaviour now.
2 years in a row, I'll say.
Yeah, you wait, next year.
Thank you. Good evening.
Great. Thanks a lot, Max. Thanks. Thanks, Luke.
Sorry?
Well, West Country actually.
Can you remember? Well, you can, because that's why I brought us up about that bolt or that hoo-ha when we were,
Oh, no.
we were trying to, and they wanted to lay this lane, that lane, and God knows.
Right, okay. Thanks very much indeed. So let's move on to item 5, environmental health enforcement. And we've got Jeff Carpenter here to take us through that. I'm assuming you'd like to start things off and say whatever you, or present the report, say whatever you'd like to say.
That's right. Yeah, I've just got a few slides just to kind of re-emphasise some of the items that are in the report and perhaps add a little bit more weight to it. Introduce myself first, Jeff Carpenter, Environmental Health Manager. I've been in post since about March this year, so a lot of this predates me being here. So don't shoot.
That's no excuse.
But yeah, so essentially this is a report that helps to or hopes to provide information on how we deliver environmental health, in particular our approach to enforcement. We do an awful lot more than enforcement, which I hope to explain along the way. And I'll first explain exactly what we do within environmental health. So that's me at the top. And then we break down environmental health into those 5 functions, not including licensing, which is not part of this particular report because licensing reports to its own committee. But that said, licensing in itself does do some enforcement activity in itself. But so we have environmental protection, community safety, food safety, health and safety at work, and private sector housing enforcement. Now, the role of environmental health is really there to protect the public health and well-being. I'll come on to our functions in due course. It's a very diverse and wide-ranging function. And we undertake a whole range of statutory enforcement activities and provide a range of regulatory and advisory services. A lot of our enforcement functions is based on risk. We don't just go out there willy-nilly and walk into premises. It's a risk-based process in the majority of areas that we deal with, and is dictated by statute, by codes of practice, and by national guidance, which we must adhere to. Now, environmental health, unlike other areas within the council, a lot of it is actually statutory. We have to provide these functions to protect public health and safety. So, for example, our statutory enforcement work would include things like food hygiene. We are the food authority for food hygiene and food safety in this area. We are also responsible and provide statutory functions in terms of health and safety compliance within certain prescribed premises. The Health and Safety Executive undertake the same function for other more risky processes. We have to investigate nuisance complaints and, for example, noise and dust and smoke and all these kind of things. We have a legal obligation to do so. We have a legal obligation to protect and monitor air quality across Rushcliffe. All these areas I'll come on to in a bit. And we monitor HMOs, houses of multiple occupation, to explain that fully. But there are other things that we do within environmental health which are not statutorily required of us, but we provide them because they meet our corporate objectives, and it's the right thing to do. And that would include things such as environmental crime, which I'll explain in a bit, empty homes, empty property strategies that we're currently looking at, and some elements of community safety, although there's an element of community safety which is also statutorily required. Then all of our enforcement, bearing in mind that the majority of stuff that we deal with environmental health, we provide, enforcement is just a very small element of it, okay? The majority of work that we do with environmental health and licensing is around advice and education. If that doesn't work, the last resort is enforcement. And I hope that you'll find from the tables within the report that actually we do an awful lot of demand within environmental health, lots of complaints, lots of inspections, but actually we do comparatively little in terms of having to take people to court and take enforcement action. And that is because that by and large, and the key message I think I'd like to play, is that Rushcliffe is a largely compliant area. Our businesses are largely compliant and operate in compliance with the law. Part of that, I would hope to say, is because we provide them with good quality advice and support to enable them to comply. However, when we do have to go down the enforcement route, which is the purpose of this report, we have to comply with the Council's enforcement policy. That's been in place since 2010 and was last updated in June 2017. Like I alluded to earlier, we also have to have regard to what's called the Regulator's Compliance Code. And that's there in order to promote efficient and effective approaches to inspection and not to be overly burdensome on business. So this report covers environmental health, doesn't cover licensing. Now, again, so having got our enforcement policy in place, what options exist for us to take enforcement action where we have to? Well, by and large, in the majority of cases, we deal with it just through informal warnings. That might be through verbal warnings if we're doing an inspection, or it might be a letter and that kind of thing. If it's a little bit more serious and we have to formalise things somewhat, then we are able to issue a statutory enforcement notice. So that might be an improvement notice if it was a food business or health and safety. But it could also include fixed penalty notices, which we use especially in terms of our environmental crime responsibilities, which I'll explain later. Now, if it's even more serious, and we actually, for example, if there's an imminent risk to health or injury, and where we have to step down and protect public health and safety, we can issue this is called a cessation notice. It may otherwise be termed a prohibition notice, or in terms of food hygiene, an emergency prohibition notice, where actually we can immediately close a business. And in fact, this year we've had to issue 2 of those on food businesses, which I'll come on to within the report. Although in both cases that was done voluntarily, but it had to be it had to go through to the magistrates' courts. So having dealt with the immediate action, immediate risk, we then have to decide whether or not to prosecute or not. And the options there are to issue a simple caution or to prosecute. Simple caution would avoid having to go to court and burden the courts with all of that if the offence is of such a nature that prosecution is not deemed necessary. We may well offer a simple caution. But the sanctions, when we do decide which of those to use, we have to consider that which is the most appropriate in order to change the behaviour of the offender. what's the best in order to eliminate any financial gain or benefit from non-compliance, what's going to be the most proportionate to the offence, and what's going to be the best in terms of deterring future non-compliance. So that's the context of enforcement within environmental health. What is it that we actually do? I'll cover each thematic area very quickly. Environmental protection. We issue and monitor regulating environmental permits. So in terms of pollution, there are certain industries that require an environmental permit, and we issue those, and we carry out periodic inspections, or I should say annual inspections of the majority of those. There are two parts of that. There's Part A processes, which are inspected and issued by the Environment Agency. They're the really polluting processes, things like the power station. And we deal with what are called either A2s or Bs, which are the more less polluting processes. Okay, that might be a car resprayer or that kind of thing. Or petrol stations, for example, would also be a Part B process. We monitor local air quality, and I'm sure I've talked about this, haven't I? Investigation, noise complaints. We also have a dog warden and pest control service, and we deal with animal welfare. In terms of air quality, I think just the headline really is that air quality within the area is much improved. We do have 2 air quality management areas, but they're being reviewed at the moment with a view that actually we may withdraw those AQMAs because they're currently beneath the threshold for nitrogen dioxides. In terms of environment protection, demand is fairly stable, but fairly busy. And in terms of this particular team, the demand is of a quite complex nature. You're dealing with noise complaints from commercial or industrial premises, that kind of thing. So if you're dealing with those kind of complaints, it can be quite a complex affair to gain an improvement. So in terms of the key numbers, you can see there that we've got 25 permitted processes for environmental pollution, sorry. We carried out inspections of 25 of those. Quite a number of complaints about noise from industrial commercial premises, as you can see 145 of those. But in terms of enforcement, only issued 2 abatement notices in 2017, 2018, and no prosecutions at all. Stray dogs, fairly stable, 162 of those, and no dog fouling fixed penalty notices. But look at the number of demand that we've got in this area, nearly 3,000 requests for service. So in terms of the demand, the amount of enforcement is really comparatively small. Community safety is another area. In this team, we will investigate domestic nuisance. So the same thing with the noise and the dust and the smoke, but this time it's more for residential premises. We also deal with antisocial behaviour and environmental crimes such as this. We also deal with and work with the police and the South Nottinghamshire Community Safety Partnership to help prevent crime through targeted campaigns. For example, the Shop Watch scheme and things like that. These examples for fly tipping. The one on the left is a successful prosecution that we've recently concluded. This person committed 2 offences, so we caught him on CCTV, our own CCTV camera that we installed overtly, I should point out. He was caught taking those fridges and dumping them. He was ordered to undertake 100 hours unpaid work under supervision and was ordered to pay £85 victim surcharge and was fined £1,200. We also attempted to seize that van. In fact, we did seize the van, and we wanted to get a forfeiture order from the court to stop him from doing this again. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. However, I'm pleased to be able to say that he also had a scrap metal dealer's licence that my licensing team issue, and we've now revoked it. So he is now not a scrap metal dealer within Rushcliffe. We've also dealt with the Environment Agency in terms of his licence for waste, carrier's licence. The one on the right is a very up-to-date issue. It's fly tipping on the A52. I think that's within the last couple of weeks. So this is an ongoing investigation, but it gives you a flavour of the kind of things that we're dealing with. And with that particular example, we need to, how are we going to get the offence? I think we're putting in a camera there in the next couple of weeks.
When was that?
When?
Where?
It's just in front of Sharphill Wood, isn't it? Is that the lane that was installed? It was going to be by Brian Wells. About
You know
5
better
years
than
ago.
I do.
Yeah, I think so.
We receive a very large number of fly tips reports, as you can see in this graph. The blue is the number of reports that we get reported to us. The red are the numbers that we actually investigate. So we'll only investigate the fly tips where we've got evidence, or where it's potentially able for us to get evidence. So green waste, for example, garden refuse, we're not going to get the evidence unless it's been witnessed. So one of the other prosecutions that we've had this year we've had two prosecutions for fly tipping. The other one where it was taken on dashboard cameras on it from the car. But in the majority of cases, as you can see, the evidence isn't within the waste. So other environmental crimes, graffiti. So the one on the left is another one. This was from the Tour of Britain this year, where this manufacturer called Spokesuck, I believe he manufactures cycle tyres, had these signs plastered across the highway in a number of places. But anyway, I'm pleased to report that we issued him with 20 fixed penalty notices for each one of those offences, which he has paid. And he's also agreed to pay for the cleaning of that site as well.
That was a bit of an emergency one, that was, Jeff, because this was spotted literally, 2 days before the Tour of Britain.
Yeah.
I think spotted by probably one of our chaps out in the refuse vehicles. And so Jeff and his colleagues and Dave Banks were on the phone, because it's highways, county council, what can we do? We couldn't get them, I don't think we could get it cleaned off in time, and I believe what happened is it was sprayed over in black, so it wasn't visible from the helicopters filming.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And the other example there is fly posting, which actually in 2017 was the biggest source of fixed penalty notices that we issued in that year. So in terms of community safety, this is the key statistics. You can see the numbers of fixed penalty notices. You can see just in the 6 months, that's the table on the right there, just in the 6 months for this year, the numbers have drastically improved, although it increased, although that largely is the 20 fixed penalty notices for that one offender. We've also noticed there that we've issued a lot of community protection notices, CPNs as they're known, or CPWs I should say. So we will issue those where we want to address persistent and unreasonable behaviour which is detrimental to the quality of life of those in the area. And we're finding that could be really quite useful to deal with antisocial behaviour, waste and nuisance, as opposed to dealing with it through other regimes.
Could I ask, the complaints about noise, and you put domestic, what is that people having a...
Neighbour nuisance, yes. Loud parties, that kind of thing. Yeah, TV
So you're
noise.
shouting at your husband a lot.
Shouting, yeah, that kind of thing. Yeah. And the seizure of equipment might be, for example, if someone's got a loud stereo and they're banging out music on a frequent basis, we can serve them with an abatement notice, but we can also seize their noise-making equipment.
And quite often it's the time of day or night that they use it. I think during the day people accept a bit more noise than they would late at night and so.
Indeed, indeed.
What do you
is a fixed penalty notice, how much is the fine?
There's a range. I believe in the majority of cases in terms of environmental crime, you're looking at sort of £75. I think there's a range of FPNs, and it's reduced if you pay within, a bit like your parking tickets. If you pay within a defined period, it's reduced. So food hygiene. Like I said earlier, we have a statutory role as a food authority for enforcement of food law. And we undertake this work in partnership with the Food Standards Agency. And this role essentially is the inspection of food premises, of which we have 818 in the borough. And we'll inspect those food businesses on a risk-based basis. Okay, so and it's based on A to E. So if it's an A rated, it might be inspected every 6 months. If it's a low risk business, E, it may be inspected every 5 years, something like that. Okay, we don't have to inspect all of them every year. Is the point I'm making. We also undertake food samples and investigate complaints relating to food. So people complain about a fly in your Chinese takeaway or whatever, that kind of thing. And we'll also maintain the National Food Hygiene Rating Scheme, which I'm sure you'll be familiar when you go out to your local restaurant.
Where's that place?
Yeah, indeed. So we within the report, I've noted
your house.
I've noted a couple of pending cases in relation to rat infestation. This is one of those.
I think one of the places within my ward, I think, is probably one of the two that you're mentioning.
Very possibly. But yeah, that's the kind of thing we're looking for when we're carrying out an inspection. So Michelle there, on the one hand, I think actually that's out here. She's just doing some temperature control from the fridges. But routinely looking at in a food premises for its cleanliness.
While we've got that food hygiene rating thing up, I saw a documentary, well, maybe a couple of months ago, about those, that a lot of restaurants that would ordinarily say have a score of 0 or less are printing those off.
Oh yes, I saw that.
Did you see it? Yeah. So, how are we tackling that as an issue, or have you thought about looking into that as an issue? Because if you only go every 6 months or something, they could say there are 5, and we wouldn't know.
That would be fraud, and that would be investigated by the police. So it wouldn't be something that we would personally. And the scheme, food hygiene rating scheme, is governed by the Food Standards Agency. Okay, so there's a food standard which we have to comply with, which is monitored and managed by the Food Standards Agency. So it's not something that we would deal locally within Rushcliffe. Okay.
Is it? I think you can actually go online and check.
Yes, and I encourage you to do so,
can't you? And
yeah, I encourage you to do so. Yeah, I've got it on my phone. So, yeah. And I'd just point out also that you wouldn't get. I'd hope you wouldn't get many zeros within Rushcliffe. In fact, 90% of food businesses within over 90% within Rushcliffe have a rating of 4 or above. Okay, so which goes back to the majority of businesses are compliant.
Yes. Sorry, I was just going to make the point that Jeff's made, that in Rushcliffe it's not high risk that you'll be visiting an establishment with a 0, because we are on the 4s and 5s, the majority of. But I think Jeff's point about checking online as well as what's in the window, and if people do get a very low rating, they often want to have a re-inspection because they want to increase it. So whilst Jeff's team don't have to go back, within however many months, we offer a service, don't we, Jeff, where they can actually have a re-inspection.
Yeah, they can apply for a re-rating, which is chargeable, albeit only at cost recovery. So yeah, we will. I think it has to be. I think it has to be a 6-month gap between the inspection and the re-rating visit, which, like I say, is chargeable. One of the issues that we're finding, and you may hear about it in the news, is that it's not mandatory to have these labels on a window. Judged by and large, if you're 5-star, potentially 4-star,
You want to shout about it?
yes, you'll shout about it indeed. And that is part of the idea of the scheme, was to make it competitive and to bring competitive advantage into it. So if you've got 3 or below, then you ain't going to shout about it. In Wales, it's been mandatory for a few years, and there are increasing calls for it to become mandatory within England as well. But at the moment, it isn't. So if you go on your app, you'll soon find out. Or everything's publicised and open and honest.
Councillor Jones, did you want to ask?
No, I was going to say you can check it on your app,
All right.
on your phone,
Yeah.
and if the place that you want to eat has got a 5, but you look on your phone and it says it's a 2, you then report it to their local council, and they will go out
Absolutely.
and take everything down, and they'll fine them and everything. So it's the way to do it, is that
Yeah.
way. And it's not just businesses as well. Schools have to have those ratings up as well.
They don't have to have them up.
You don't have to have them up.
It's not mandatory.
You do
But
go out.
yeah, we will. They're one of the 818 food pet premises that we inspect. Yes.
Is there anything? Is it worth us as a council writing to whoever, the Food Standards Agency or the Secretary of State, whoever, DEFRA or whoever it is, to say, "Oi, let's have this mandatory, Sunshine"?
I believe it's already in the chain to happen. I don't think it's this. I think there were calls from certainly my profession, Chartered Institute of Environmental Health, to speed it up. I think they've been talking about it for quite a while, and I think the trial in Wales has been successful. The only thing I would say around the food hygiene rating scheme is that it's in many ways it has driven improvement in standards across the industry, which is to be hailed. The downside of it from an officer's perspective is that actually it can give rise to some competitive behaviours on the part of some food business operators. So my officers have actually been, shall we say, have had to put up with some difficult behaviours because they have up to recently been advising the food business operator of what their score is at the time of the inspection. And if you don't get your 5, you're not very happy. And so we've had to, I am even considering providing my officers with cameras, body cameras. It's got to that level. I don't think it's necessarily elsewhere within Nottinghamshire. My partners across the county don't experience the same issue. It does seem to be a bit of a Rushcliffe thing. But it is something that I'm having to bear in mind. So it's good that it's driven behaviour. It's bad that it's the officers having to put up with that.
I would still thought that it's worth us actually writing a letter to add our voice to say, come on, let's have it mandatory. Because you say they've been talking about it. Well, you can talk about it forever, can't you?
Yeah.
So I think we ought to have that as an action. And let's have a letter.
Yes, excellent. We don't want to be in a position where we say, oh gosh, if only we'd done something.
Yeah. Right. Well, does it relate to what we've just? Because I'm conscious. How far are you through your?
Few.
Are you halfway or 3/4?
No, probably 3/4.
Right. Okay, Councillor Bailey.
Are your visits unannounced, or do they know that you're turning up? They are unannounced?
Unannounced.
Great.
Yeah. No
Good.
warning them.
Always unannounced.
Right. Okay. Let's crack on.
So there's the doubts. It's in your report, so I won't labour the point too much. The only point to notice there is the reduction in written warnings, which is quite marked, but that's down to a change in the definition of a written warning from the codes of practice that were issued by the Food Standards Agency. But the numbers of broadly compliant premises have actually increased, as you can see there, 95%. One thing I wanted to just brush past you today really was also to advise you that we also act as a primary authority. Now this is where a business may have a number of multiple sites across the country. And primary authority is a government scheme whereby a business can seek a partnership with a local authority to get assured advice on how they meet regulatory requirements. So if you go, for example, we have a primary authority with both Boots and Jurors Inn. So if
would it be correct to say it's sort of like a subcontractor consultant, advisor?
Kind of. It's a bit more formal than that, Chair, to be honest. So, for example, if Boots in Liverpool gets inspected and there is an issue around how they meet their compliant with food law, although now also health and safety, we're Primary Authority for Health and Safety as well, they have to come through to us. So Boots rely on our assured advice across the UK on food hygiene and health and safety. Okay, and Jurors Inn the same. So
could you end up somebody what has to go down to Penzance to?
We wouldn't have to go down to Penzance. The local Cornwall Council would carry out the inspection in Penzance. But if they'd got an issue with complying with food law, they'd have to check the assured advice that Boots in Penzance has been given by ourselves. So the benefit to business is that they've got consistent advice. No matter where they are across the UK, they can rely on that advice across the UK. Okay, it's a one-stop shop. Okay. So we do that now for Boots, for example. We do that for food hygiene and health and safety. So and they pay for that advice on a cost recoverable basis. Health and safety. So we are responsible for health and safety enforcement. It's fair to say that health and safety enforcement has not been, I wouldn't say it's been dumbed down, that's the wrong phrase, but the guidance that's associated with health and safety means that you don't have to do as many inspections as you used to. They weren't found to be a particularly effective means of gaining improvements. Bearing in mind that the health and safety premises that we enforce are by definition the lower risk premises. However, we do enforce a large number of premises, and we limit our resources, we target our resources in specific areas, that is to say, investigating accidents and inspecting themed premises. So last year we did a process of inspecting premises with tandoori ovens, because that's been found nationally to be a cause of accidents. Nearly at the end, last one, private sector housing. So in this team, we investigate private housing complaints, disrepair and overcrowding. We inspect houses of multiple occupation. We inspect park homes and caravan parks, and investigation of unauthorised encampments. So numbers of complaints, relatively small numbers, but again quite detailed premises usually. Okay, open to questions.
Okay, right, thanks, Beatle.
Yeah, in your report, you mention, and I can see obviously the numbers of prosecutions are quite low. Are they are those numbers successful prosecutions, or are those numbers unsuccessful and successful prosecutions, if you see what I mean?
From memory, I don't think we undertook hardly any prosecutions in 2017-18. The prosecutions that we've taken, in fact, I'm looking at the table now, it's already out of date because we've taken 2 this year already, and they've been successful. No, there's nothing in here about unsuccessful prosecutions. If we take a prosecution, it's successful.
Right. What I'm trying to get at, maybe I've not put it very well, have you had any prosecutions that have been unsuccessful, and so therefore on that list?
No.
No, okay, fine, thank you.
Councillor Jeffries?
There's, in the press quite frequently, there's records of all sorts of nasty things happen to people who eat out and they have allergies, and things go seriously wrong, and there have been 1 or 2 deaths. You don't mention anything to do with allergies that we've had in the area, and I actually witnessed one, and it's really quite horrifying. Someone is eating something for 2 or 3 minutes and then they go into shock, have to be rushed to hospital. Can you tell us, have we had, well, I know that we have. Do you keep a record of them, and do you do anything about it?
No, allergies would be governed through the food trading standards, which is part of the county council function. So we have very little involvement. That'd be sort of food labelling, for example, comes under the trading standards auspices rather than environmental health. Our responsibility rests with, if you like, microbiological standards, clean food, food hygiene and food safety, not food labelling.
But it's quite frightening when you
Oh, indeed. Indeed, my son's got nut allergy himself as well, so yeah.
Just going back to fly posting, what stance do you take in terms of enforcing it? Is discretion used depending on whether it's a commercial organisation that's fly posting, or if there's a local organisation doing a coffee morning to raise funds for charity or whatever? You know, what stance do your staff take?
I would caveat it and say that each case on its merits, in accordance with the enforcement policy that I alluded to. But no, there will be no special treatment to one or the other. Fly posting is fly posting.
Mr. Walker?
Mr. Chair, if you may, there's a couple of two areas I'd like to ask a couple of questions about, if that's okay. First, the bit of data in the report, which I definitely speak for the residents in my ward, and I'm guessing for others too, that would cause the least surprise but the most consternation of the complete lack of dog fouling fixed penalty notices. From the point of view of prevalence versus detection. What can we do to increase that?
Well, I've got 2 dog wardens who are also my pest control officers. So their function is their time to be able to carry out. They do carry out routine patrols of high risk areas within the borough. So we will do that, and they will, if they observe, and this is the point, gathering sufficient evidence upon which to issue a fixed penalty notice. It has to be witnessed, frankly. And that evidence, the chance of witnessing someone not pick up after their dog is few and far between, unless you had eyes and ears everywhere. I think I would say that.
I think we should be looking to increase it. I understand, a crime that is difficult to detect, and the other area that I wanted to ask about was fly tipping.
Yeah.
Which, of course, I appreciate rural areas is very hard to detect. That can't and shouldn't be a reason not to try. So my suggestions would be that the question that I asked previously, what can we do to increase this? I think we as a council should be coming up with something other than a shrug of the shoulders and nothing. So in fly tipping, for example, we have one of the performance management targets is around the number of fly tipping cases reported.
Mm-hmm.
What I would propose that we actually measure are the percentage of those that leads to convictions. We're at 1% at the moment. I think for the numbers that I took there, 3 out of 240 odd.
Very few.
And again, I'm not saying it's easy. I know we all know it's not easy to detect, but I, humbly suggest that we ought to be looking to see what we can do to increase the conviction rate for both dog fouling and.
Yeah, I mean the problem with all this, isn't it? It's finding that balance of how much resources you put to it, and this needs to be a policy discussion as to what policy the council should adopt in order to achieve this. And obviously, if the council decided, right, we're going to have 20 wardens or whatever, then presumably the probability is that the enforcement will shoot up. So I think that's probably more of a policy issue.
I think what we've tried to do in the past is really promote the Eyes and Ears campaign. So Jeff's got 2 staff who deal with this, and however many 100 square miles.
Yeah.
that to be as effective as possible, we need local intelligence, and that's where the Eyes and Ears campaign comes in, or working with parish councils, or working with local communities, and whether that's through enhanced education, because you'll know your local primary school does not want people letting their dog foul the verge next to the local primary school, and they put up signs and try to discourage people. If people know of offenders, persistent offenders, then it gives us a starting point. If people don't feel able to address that locally, it's something that we can do working with our staff and with the local police, and we start to understand who are the perpetrators or the persistent offenders, and we have to have a sort of campaign of it's not acceptable. It's not acceptable. It's not socially acceptable, is it? With the fly tipping, the prosecutions really do rely on evidence within the fly tip. So as Jeff's explained, we do move our mobile CCTV cameras around, and one of those prosecutions was caught on camera. But also, if there is evidence, we can then prosecute. If we don't have evidence, we can't. But again, if people see anything, dash cameras, if you see people pulling into a lay-by and you think they're not doing they're doing something they shouldn't be doing, and we get a lead, we get some information, we can start to look at it. And I am very sympathetic of your frustration, because I feel the same. It's how can we best maximise our resources and get the best to improve those, turning an offence into some action afterwards.
That's exactly the question. Sorry. That's exactly the question, and that's why I'm suggesting that in order to focus attention, that we have a target and we look to measure the convictions rather than simply the number of cases that are reported.
I think if you're happy with this, Chairman, I think that's something that we can take away from the meeting and feed back to the next meeting, working with Jeff and colleagues as to how we could try and look at more. I mean, we have done this targeted work, as I said, with the Eyes and Ears approach. I don't know the data to that of how realistic it is, but it certainly is something we want to try and achieve.
Yeah. Okay. So.
Yes, I feel very strongly about this. And people dumping their rubbish and detritus wherever they think and so on. And I think we've all got to be snoops, really. I don't like this idea, but every time my husband and I are out and we see a van that has got anything at the back which is metal, obviously they've been round collecting, he always says, take that number, take that number. And I think we've got to be very vigilant, and as we go about, see these vehicles. And I think if I have someone come to my house that I employ and ask to take away rubbish from the house, I need to know where it's going, and I have a right to ask them, where is this being dumped? And I think we should be more vigilant about that.
And I would add that you've got a duty of care to do that as well, because there's a fixed penalty notice coming within the next 6 months that on householders, that if you allow your waste to be fly tipped, even if you didn't do it, you could be issued with a fixed penalty notice.
Yes, that's right. So I think we've got to be more vigilant, snoop, and as my husband says, take the number down, because at some time that rubbish is going to appear somewhere, isn't it? And you've got some idea of how this is happening. I don't know whether we could. I know policemen are overstretched and there's not enough of them and so on, but they do have cameras on the motorway. So I know if I put my foot down, I'm going to get caught, and I do get caught, and I'm a naughty girl and I'm in trouble. How is it that they can't be more vigilant looking at vehicles that are bringing stuff? I mean, I live at Cochrane, and the amount of stuff that was dumped on us 3 years ago, it took actually 3 days. It took 3 days. How come nobody noticed? It's still there. It's rat infested. The person responsible, I understand, is having a holiday at Her Majesty's expense. And the County Council have looked into it. and it's stalemate. We can't do anything. It was a beautiful part of the village where people used to walk their dogs, the kids used to go up there on their bicycles and so on, and it's been taken away from the people in my village, and I really do object to it. And yet it's stalemate, and we're not able to do anything. So please, could we really look into this seriously?
Yeah, right, okay, so Kath, if you can set that away and then bring it back.
Yeah. Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
okay. That's the third one.
Put one in. Thank you, Chairman. This has happened to me quite recently. We went to a pub to eat, which showed his 5 on the door. Later on in the evening, I went to the toilet. I was absolutely horrified by the state of the toilet. When you go to check a restaurant, do you look at their toilets or on the same expedition? But bearing in mind, the horror of this for me was the gents' loo door was right next to the kitchen door where they're coming out with the food.
Right, yeah, sure.
when I sort of brought it all together.
Sure. The answer is probably yes, because we would also be the health and safety authority for that same premises. If it's a restaurant or a retail establishment, we enforce health and safety as well. So you wouldn't routinely go into the public toilets if you're carrying out a food inspection. That's the truth of it. But if you were carrying out a full health and safety inspection as well, which we wouldn't always do, but usually, fair chances that we would do as well. But it wouldn't be part and parcel of a standard food inspection to inspect the toilets, if that answers your question.
Well, it answers the question, yeah, but it doesn't solve the problem.
Can it be?
Not really. We'd carry out the food inspection in accordance with food law. What's the risk to food? No, if your point about it being next door, I mean, there's an issue there around how there would be an issue there how close the toilets are to the food preparation area and the risk of contamination. If there's a risk of contamination, then it most certainly is part of the food hygiene inspection. Okay, normally they wouldn't be together in that sense. It wouldn't be conjoined or joining.
Okay,
right. Okay, time's rather moving on. So, unless there's any other burning question, I think we've got that action to take away. So, thank you very much indeed. And we'll let you disappear. Thank you. Right, let's move on quickly. Item 6, diversity annual reports. And Julie Hicks miraculously slides into place. And I realise you've been waiting an awfully long time, but I'm going to ask you if you could be very succinct.
I will be very succinct, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This is an annual report that I bring to members that sets out the Council's performance against its objectives as set out in the Council's Single Equality Scheme. And these objectives are to monitor the demographic makeup of our residents and our workforce, consult with customers and staff where appropriate, and carry out equality impact assessments. And there are appendices that are attached to the report that members can view that show the demographic information of the area and information on our workforce. So as a public sector body, we are required to be an exemplar and to measure the impact of our policies on the people with the protected characteristics. The collection and monitoring of this information is an important way of the Council increasing its understanding of the impact of these policies. As a Council, we regularly update the information, and it's held centrally on the HR information system. And in line with GDPR this year, we issued a privacy statement to our employees, and there were a number of privacy statements put out for members of the public to view. So in terms of ethnicity, our workforce information shows that we don't currently reflect the demographic of the borough. However, as a council, we always strive through our training and policies to encourage applications from underrepresented groups. In terms of the age profile of the organisation, which is in line with most local authorities, shows that there continues to be a peak at the 45 to 54 age group. And the number of 25s, under 25s has increased by 3 this year, and we continue to encourage young people into a career in local government through our apprenticeship schemes. In terms of disability, the number of employees who declare they have a disability has remained the same. It's been fairly static for a number of years now. The council is a disability confident employer, which, if people remember the 2-tick scheme, the disability confident has taken over that, and we've met the required criteria and standards to be reaccredited in 2017. Some other work we've been doing, we partnered with Leonard Cheshire Homes to employ a 100-day internship, a disabled graduate. This assists with their employability skills, and the first intern was successful in obtaining a role in marketing and media in Nottingham. And this year we had a second intern from the borough who, again, she developed her skills, and we're hopeful that she will go on to a successful career. In terms of our gender split, we do have fewer females than male employees, but that is due in some part to the council's manual workforce, which tends to be more male dominated. But we've been quite proud in so much as we've had our first female refuse driver, which, you know, we were really pleased at, and we hope that we will encourage that to continue. From the 6th of April 2018, all employers with employees of 250 or more were required to publish their gender pay gap. And as I say, this is available for members to view and for members of the public to view on the council's internet. In terms of consultation, we always consult with our employees on policies, and I know that service areas regularly consult on their policies and service delivery to the public. As a council, we produce equality impact assessments. We ensure that we are demonstrating that we consider the impact of our decisions on residents and also our employees. We also look to continuously improve, and we do this by training and developing our employees. All our new employees are required to complete equality and diversity e-learning within the first 2 weeks of their employment with the council. And our manual workforce, we actually go out and do toolbox talks so that they can also receive the same training as employees who can access the computers in the offices. This year our employees have attended various courses, and members will be able to view in the report that we like to cover a variety of subjects to do with equality and diversity. So I hope that members are happy to consider and endorse the report. I hope
Okay.
that was
Okay, thanks, Julie.
speedily enough for you.
Councillor Edwards.
Thank you. I found that very helpful and illuminating and over an important and sensitive area. Paragraph 3.3 of the report, equalities monitoring of homelessness applications is for central government. Rushcliffe reflects the national picture in terms of ethnic minorities being overrepresented in terms of presenting as homeless. Fine, we've got the statistics. Does any action flow from that? Do we get anything, any help from central government for this? Do we get any anything from it, or is this just a collection of a number which then rests?
I don't believe we do. It's information that we have to gather. It's sent to central government. We work with anyone who presents as homeless. It's a fact that the minorities are overrepresented. What central government are doing with that, I can't tell you. Hopefully, they are doing something with it. We don't get any additional support or anything to do that. We have had recently, over the last year, I think it's probably for 2 years, we've got additional funding because with the recent changes to the Homeless Reduction Act, there's actually there's a wider definition of those who can present being in need of assistance for housing than was previously the case. And as you may know, it's a challenging environment to work with, and our officers are very good, well trained, sympathetic, but they have to interpret the law. And are you legally homeless? And if so, we will look to support you. And sometimes they have to turn people away to say, you are not legally homeless. I'm sorry, you need to look for a different route. So there's almost, I think, a partnership or of work between the statutory duties of the local authority and the more and the role of the voluntary sector, who can take a wider role in some of this work. But the basic answer to your question is no.
One other, really a comment, and that's paragraph 10.2. Extremely pleased to see this in-service training and development. In my experience, the last one there, understanding unconscious bias, is by far the most important, because that's the area where people quite inadvertently can not just put their foot in it, they can put the organisation in it. And that links also with the one about cultural awareness, including faith and belief. And I'm really pleased to see that. Is there any follow-up on that once members of staff have undertaken that? Is there any sort of follow-up 6 months later to say to the member of staff, you did that, how has that affected your practices in the way you work?
So we do, as Julie said, we do mandatory training for people when they start. We do regular refreshers, but we're also conscious that sometimes, staff may inadvertently offend. And so that is when we will do some more proactive work and say, look, we know you hope you didn't mean, but we need to work with you about how you address people or how you deal with people. And that would then be reflected and be a continuous process. Staff have regular one-to-ones. Julie will be aware of anybody who goes on these sorts of training courses. if we don't, you know, if we didn't see improvements that we're looking for, we would obviously have to address that. But ideally, we're looking to see improvements in behaviour and understanding, so that we don't have issues occurring. If we had reoccurrence of difficult issues, we would have to address that through the other routes, the more formal routes.
Yes, but we also do have refresher training as well. I think it's not just, yes, we've trained you once and we expect that that's it, you know, you'll know it forever and a day. I think we need to keep people alive to the fact that they can fall foul of things. You know, they need to be constantly thinking about how they act and deal with members of the public and their colleagues.
I mean, it's very important in the context, Chairman, of the that the council's workforce doesn't properly reflect. Sorry, proper is the wrong word. Doesn't reflect the ethnicity of Rushcliffe's population. So therefore, this sort of training and sensitivity and constant reinforcing becomes more important. And I'm pleased to hear that. And I suppose I'd urge you to really keep at it and give priority to this.
Okay. Any more, Councillor Phillips?
Just one question on the age profile, where it says there are fewer young people in the 25 to 29 age bracket, which may reflect suitable work opportunities following university. Is that not more likely to be there's no opportunity for them to get on the property ladder because things are so expensive? There's plenty of jobs.
Right. I think there's more as an observation, I think, is that, yeah.
I support.
Right, okay. So, sorry, Councillor Walker.
There's in the data there's some large red numbers, mean and median bonus pay gap. Forgive me, I don't understand how those numbers are calculated. Could somebody explain what they are?
So, sorry, did you want to know what the reds?
So I can see that it's minus 96.4, but I've got no idea what that number means.
Okay, so the red numbers actually mean that it benefits women rather than men. So so the median average, it shows that women have a slightly higher median pay rate than men. So the report I've got here says in 2017 the gap was 14 pence. And in this year the gap is 1 pence, which is less than 1%.
Julie, it's linked to the bonus figures. So bonuses, basically you might think, well, why is the council paying bonuses? The bonus payments relate to performance-related pay. We have a performance-related pay scheme in the contact centre. So that is where staff can, they're on a spot salary, and they can be awarded an increment or 2 increments based on their performance. So we are rewarding performance rather than time served. This was a pilot scheme brought in the contact centre 4 years ago, and we've made it a permanent scheme. The way that it skews the figures is that we have more women in those roles than men. So there's more women who are able to access a bonus scheme from that perspective. The other bonus scheme that we have is a long service award, which is a one-off payment made if a member of staff has done 25 years service. Conversely, that scheme actually benefits men more than women, although the numbers will probably be 2 a year. Whereas in the contact centre, off the top of my head I can't tell you the exact number, but for argument's sake there might be 12 females on the scheme and 3 men on the scheme. How that minus 279.3 is worked out, I don't know, but we can follow it up and come back to you if that's all right.
If you don't mind, one other question. The ethnic diversity of the workforce is something that's already been mentioned, and also the report mentions the gender pay gap. If I could summarise the comments in both those sections after that, I don't think it would be unfair to say that we're saying we're doing our best, but ... they still exist. Are we happy that are we doing good enough in those two areas?
I think we're doing as much as we possibly can. You know, we do everything we can to encourage a diverse workforce. You know, one might say that one thing leads to another. The more ethnically diverse we are, the more you'll encourage us to remain so or become more so. As I say, I don't really know what more we can do. We've actually in the past gone out to areas where there are you know, high ethnicity. When we were at the Civic Centre, we used to advertise, you know, around the Meadows area, which was literally just across the bridge. But to encourage them across that bridge seemed to be a bridge too far.
Okay.
In terms of the gender issue, I think we're doing a lot of work around encouraging women into the authority, and you know, I think if you look at our senior officers, you know, you will see that the majority, you know, are women.
Okay, right, last question, Councillor Chewins.
Thank you. On 6.2, it states that fewer female employees than males work at the Borough Council due to the Council's manual workforce. Could you tell me what the split between office workers and manual workers is, please?
I can't off the top of my head, but I can certainly provide you with that information.
It's about 4 to 1, but we can 4 to 1 office to manual, but we can get the figures for you.
Okay. Good. Right. Thanks, Julie. Thank you for that. Right. Item 7. Performance monitoring, quarter 2. Is it? What are we doing with this one? Are we? Charlotte.
I have 2 hats on this evening.
Right. Okay. Very quickly.
Very quickly. Similar report to you're used to seeing every quarter, so I will just bring your attention to paragraph 4.3, which gives you 2 selected highlights for this quarter. So the number of affordable homes delivered increased significantly, so we have built 121, which has already exceeded the target for this year. And the level of income generated through letting property that we own but we don't occupy is also very high for this point of the year. And the void periods, the bits where we haven't got anybody in, we've minimised those. So if we have a turnover of tenants, it's done quickly to maximise our income. In addition to the exceptions that we reported at quarter 1, there is a new exception for quarter 2, which is the percentage of community support grant spent to date. This is much lower than it is normally at this point in the year at 16.5%. And this is as well as the fact that we've promoted it to councillors through Councillors Connections. We've put it in a more prominent place on the website, and there is an earlier closing date for applications this year because of the Borough Council election next year. Entirely up to you what you want to do with that information. Paragraph 4.4 does contain some updates on performance exceptions reported at the last report, which I'm happy to go through, but in the interests of you getting off, maybe you could ask questions.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Any questions? Councillor Beardsall.
Yeah, still in interest of getting off, but early. There are a number of reds in this report. That's always the first thing I scan down to. You know, we've not really got enough time to go into all of them perhaps, but I'd like to make 2 points this meeting, and I think I've made it on several occasions over the last nearly 4 years. I think that we are trying to measure way too much here. The number of objectives that are being measured and reported to this committee, and I understand there are even more objectives that you guys are measuring beyond these. And when we talk about resource, you're probably spending more time measuring than actually improving.
Yeah,
so, you know, I'm not going to go on again and again about it, but I would like to bring that to the fore. And I think that is an important issue for next year, that something, we set up a working group, a working party to look at the bigger picture. Because, you know, all you're doing is creating wallpaper.
Yeah, we did question this a couple of meetings ago, and because I got the answer, well, members want to have this information and want to know about it. So it's a balance and a compromise. We probably need to try and.
I don't think members do want the information.
Well,
I think
yeah, but you might not want to, but anecdotally, other members.
Everyone
have
in
said
this
they do.
room was just laughing when I said what I said, so I'm assuming they agree with me, as it was a titter of yes, of how ridiculous it is. So all I'm saying is I think we should re-look at it, because any organisation that's measuring 300 KPIs is wasting its time measuring 300.
I mean, I think what we ought to do is have a ruthless look at them and basically have the assumption that we're not going to look at any of them, but which ones are we actually going to look at, rather than saying which ones are we going to cancel, say which ones are we going to keep.
Yeah, and more than that, I think what we should do is look at not just the ones that we get in this meeting, we should be looking at what the officers are looking at themselves in the background, because you know, it could be just completely a waste of time. In some instances, some will be very important. Let me highlight that. Some are going to be very important, and they're the ones we need to focus on. And if we focus on those, then we can drive efficiency and improvement.
Fully support what you're saying there. We have discussed this before. We've got a new, well, that we haven't. There will be a new corporate strategy being prepared over the next few months and to come into next year, and the performance indicators that link to that, it would be really helpful to have, if this group is happy to do that, have something separate from a regular meeting to look at in a bit more detail. What do you want to take on board as the ones that you regularly scrutinise? And Charlotte and I would welcome that very much. You are right, there are also lots of other indicators. A lot of those are, it's management data that we have to collect to run the business. And if you think that, you know, we've got 4 different service areas, we've got targets on each, and I accept what you're saying, and that is something that we need to do as well. Why are we collecting that data? Do we need to collect it? And it's something that we look at every year as part of service planning. But certainly, what comes to this meeting, we want it to be as relevant as possible to what you want to be looking at.
Aren't some of them also statutory ones you have to report to government?
And Chairman, we need to get all of this sorted on the 5th of March, because the next meeting is in June and some of us might have been wiped out by then.
Oh, can't imagine. Name names? No.
So sorry, sir, can I just clarify then, Chairman? So we are setting this as an action
Yeah,
to
I
do
think
as
yes.
a working
I
group,
mean,
yeah.
I don't know whether it's even. I mean, I'm thinking of officer resource time, which is more appropriate. Would it be more appropriate rather than having it as agenda item number 21 at the end of the meeting, that we actually had a little separate workshop?
Yeah.
So to actually just focus on that one item.
Certainly to to do some clarification over what indicators you want to look at as a group, it would make sense to take it outside of this meeting. But whether it makes more sense to do that in the linking into service planning and the new year.
Well, it wants to be done in time so that when the next municipal year starts, there is a new regime in place.
That's right. So it would be ready for the June meeting.
Yeah, but it's got to be done prior to March, hasn't it, really? I'm not suggesting, well, we can report on it in March, but fortunately we've got elections coming up, haven't we? So decisions aren't going to be made after March, are they? So it's got to be done in February, January/February. Yeah. Okay. Right. Good. Any other questions or comments on that? Okay. Right. Good. Right. Item 8. Work programme. Got the little addendum with the additional. Thank you. Any comments at all? I mean, it's going right through to beyond where we are now next year.
If I just say, that's your rolling items. So
Sort of
those are
standard stuff.
Those are your standard items, the regular things that you do. We've had over the past 2 meetings, we've had some extra work following interest and request around enforcement. So, they wouldn't be a regular item, but those were, special items that were brought in. It may, there is opportunity if there's certain things that you want to look at to raise, and we can put them on the agenda. We do have quite a busy programme, but I am conscious that we end up doing that. We have a regular, we have the same items each year. However, having said all of that, as was alluded to earlier, I think Luke mentioned, there has been this review of scrutiny that's been taken place. The final report, I don't think it's been issued, but that will be looked at and recommendations to be considered. So it may be as well that we just leave the programme as it is, see what comes out of that scrutiny review, but there's always the opportunity to amend the programme. So what I'm saying, very long-winded, sorry, is that you can always add, via the request form, via, request to myself, the chairman, other items that you want to look at in particular that relate to performance management.
I mean, the other issue might be, here we are again, it's 9:30, and we're sort of curtailing some, perhaps, challenges that we might have otherwise gone into in more depth. What are the resource implications if we actually had 1 or 2, in other words, have 5 meetings or 6 meetings? Is there any which is more cost efficient, to have longer meetings with more items, or putting in an extra meeting or 2?
Yeah. Personally, I would say fewer meetings, but you might expect me to say that. I think it's something that we should look at as part of the wider scrutiny review, so that this scrutiny group doesn't, go off and do its own thing without looking at what the other scrutiny groups want to do in the future. But it's one of those, it's up for debate, isn't it?
Okay, right, we'll leave that one pending. Okay, right. With that, thank you very much indeed, everybody. Safe journey home.